Don't worry, because you can catch up on the whole show at purewestradio.com or on our social media, because we've been live streaming this show for you this evening. We started off, I can't remember, we were talking about tips to well-being. That's how we started off. And then we had a lovely conversation with Tai Chi Frank. Both Hayley and Tammy have essentially signed up. And we've just come back now from having a guided imagery with Tammy. What I would... in my past life, call a mindful body scan, and it was brilliant. Hayley, just that ability. You mentioned it's difficult to switch off and find that time to do it, but if you're able, the impact of being able just to understand that we're here in this moment right now is really powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, just to be in the moment, because it's not something we're told and shown and taught how to do until you're stressed and someone says, oh, you should be in the moment, you should be doing mindfulness. But if we need to develop the skill of doing that, because I do it in nature naturally, but not if I'm not in nature at all. It's not something I would stop and practice. And the fact that it can be done in such a short space of time, it can fit anybody's lifestyle.
Yeah. It can feel, and I don't know if this is judgment, but it can feel as like if I'm just sat at my desk or like I'm taking a moment from doing work stuff, it can feel a bit contrived. Where I'm going to take a moment now to scan my body and my breath, but it's not that, is it, Tammy?
No. In this fast and busy world that we live in, a lot of us spend our time just mindful with double L. And it's just that just finding time just to focus, to empty our mind, and give time to us. And again, it doesn't have to be, hours, half hour. It can just be a quick 5 minutes, just to bring us back into the moment.
Amazing. And if you want to listen back to that, I'd probably suggest going to the social media direct, because you've got that segment, and Tammy in full screen glory, guiding you through that through the imagery as well. So that's something that you can look at. And we haven't talked about necessarily mental health issues. However, this is a mental health show. It's Healthy Minds, Better Lives. On Tuesday, Toby is going to be catching up with Jeremy Thomas. Now, I'm going to mention it now because I'm very excited that Toby's going to get this opportunity to do this. He is co-author of You Don't Have to Be Famous to Have Manic Depression, the A to Z Guide to Good Mental Health. So if you're a regular listener to this show, then you're going to be probably interested in Jeremy. He's also one of the co-producers of the Emmy Award-winning TV documentary Stephen Fry, The Secret Life of a Manic Depressive. And I think it's going to be excellent. So that's going to be on Tuesday morning and at 11:30. So you can listen in live on your smart speaker, on our mobile app, or online. And if you miss it, don't worry, it'll be available on our catch up at purewestradio.com. So daytime show Tuesday. What we're moving our attention to now, before 11 o'clock. Now, Hayley's already mentioned it. We've mentioned this before, actually, throughout many of these Healthy Minds shows. But awareness days and international days, because Hayley's already mentioned it's like they're okay, but they can put an undue stress and pressure. But as we've got them as an excuse to lift the lid on something, let's jump on it and let's actually try and lift the lid. So Tammy, you've picked out a few awareness days or international days that have been or are that are coming, and then we're also going to look forward to next month as well. So what's the first one you want to talk about?
Well, we've got International Women's Day yesterday for all the strong women. And again, I'm like Hayley. I sit on the fence in terms of, we shouldn't really need awareness days or national campaigns, because we should be doing this all the time. Flip side, it brings it to the forefront.
Yes.
We get to talk about it, and anything that sparks conversation is always going to be good from my point of view. So it's all about empowered women, empowering women.
Yeah, and of course, I sit on this panel with two powerful, inspiring women. Thank you so much for wanting. I say wanting. I'm the one to press the buttons. But of having to spend your evening with me the day after International Women's Day. You're like, what's the phrase? Let us be them. Let us raise them. And there was a phrase kicking around yesterday, which I thought was fantastic and a real simple way of understanding what International Women's Day is all about, because I think I saw somewhere in 72 countries women's rights still necessarily aren't a thing. And that's incredible that in this day and age there is still oppression of women, and being able to raise that awareness and say, well, why not? And is really important. Hayley, why do you think International Women's Day is something that should still have its day?
There's so many things that we're still battling for. And I think I'm going to say my experience, particularly with the role as mum, is often the forgotten role, even though you're integral to it. People don't really appreciate what it takes to work and have children and do all these things and juggle all these things. I think it's a moment just to sit and reflect on that. That's the way I see International Women's Day. And actually, I spent time last night with an organisation and was advised this organisation is a very old organisation, and there is still they still do not, some members do not like having women involved in that organisation. And it's been 25 years since they first introduced women into the organisation. And that just,
it's living memory, isn't it? It's still something that happens around us. I suppose I was talking about this, it must have been yesterday morning actually, with Gina, another inspiring woman that I spend most of my days with, is that I've been in the position where I've been raised by inspiring women. There's my mum, my older sister, my twin sister have been kind of pivotal to my upbringing. And then I've got my brother as well. And they've always been my sounding board, and how I view life is through their lens, because I'm the youngest in the family, even though I'm a twin. And then even through the work that I've had, particularly in the third sector, they've always been managed, and kind of at that top level, the top seniors level, has had more women representatives than male representatives. So my whole worldview is completely skewed when you consider that the glass ceiling in cities and in corporate jobs is still very much a real thing. And it's funny, Tammy, how our circumstances can often blind us to some of the issues that are going on around in our neighbourhoods and in the world around us.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Tom. And it's nice to actually have those discussions, and again, those campaigns that raise awareness, and to remind us that, of the glass ceiling, or what individuals have to fight against. So again, it's great to be surrounded by strong women. So yeah, thank you, Tom. Here's to us, Hayley.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll raise a hand to that. In fact, Manchester City Women's Football Club, they changed their kit last weekend to the colours of Emmeline Pankhurst's party when they were going through the women's rights movement as well, reminding people that in a not so distant history, there were ended up for some people being a very violent campaign to get women's rights and to get the vote and to make sure that they're still being used and utilised. So thank you to inspiring women everywhere. Another day that you've picked out, Tammy, is now it's an interesting one to talk about on a mental health show. However, Hywel Health Board they've issued their campaign for it this year, and they have linked it to anxiety. Do you want to give us a bit of insight as to what I'm referring to?
Oh, which one is it? Is it the yesterday's one?
It's the smoking.
I was going to say, is it yesterday's one?
Yeah.
National Smoking Day, quitting smoking yesterday. And again, I'll always come back to that. We don't need a day to stop a habit. We don't need a day to stop something that we deem as not good for us. But again, if it brings us to the forefront, if it makes people aim towards a day to stop smoking, the health benefits are going to definitely outweigh everything else.
Yeah. Now, with smoking and other kind of addictive substances, so my background's in is in cancer charity, and Hayley, there's this fine line between mental health and addiction. It gets thicker and thicker as your addiction takes hold. But for those that are in that difficult situation of trying to manage this addiction, and they might have the awareness that they want to quit it, but they don't know how to get the grips of the addiction off them. What advice or support can you offer, and do you know of anything that's available locally to support that?
Yeah, I think it really is about deciding what you need when you're ready to give up, and timing is absolutely everything. Because if you decide you're doing it today because somebody said you should, or it makes it a lot tougher to do it. So finding the right time for you to do it, and yeah, if you've got a day to head for and you think that's the day, great. But making sure that you are prepared for that. So setting yourself up to succeed as opposed to just letting yourself fail. I think a lot of people who have tried giving things up that they're addicted to and have failed in the past can often just wait until they fail the next time. So preparing yourself, whatever resources you need, whatever people you need. I actually met a couple of support services last month, I think it was, in Llanelli, attached to the Pentre Howell, the new wellbeing centre. They're based in Llanelli, because I'm based in Llanelli. They're in the town centre themselves for addiction. They were really interesting. But yeah, if you plan as much as you can, as well as giving yourself permission to fall off the wagon if it happens, and not judge yourself, because sometimes that happens, and when you start the judgment, that's what makes you take it all back up again. You start the judgment, the guilt kicks in, the shame kicks in, and you start back up. Whereas if we learn to, okay, this is today, I'm not having a good day, I've smoked or whatever it is, right, let me start from here. And I think you can always restart.
Yeah.
You don't have to be doing it. Ideally, you won't be doing it for 20 years, but you can always restart. This new minute is a minute to restart.
Yeah. And I think that's the key takeaway from certainly services that I've helped run in the past, is that if you've got this goal in mind and you've linked it with your values, you're more likely to succeed. But if you fail, a lot of people think, I am now a failure. I might as well just do this for the rest of my life. But that's not the case, Tammy. You can just start again.
You can. And I've just got a flashback now to us talking about Quitter's Day in January.
Yes.
Where people started their resolutions with all good intention, and then knowing full well in 2 weeks' time, well, it's Quitter's Day, so I can quit. It's really interesting when you say about that kind of like restarting. When you think of an addiction, like taking obviously smoking, because we're talking about it so poignantly, there's about 5% of the population are able to stop smoking with willpower. That's it, willpower. I've stopped. I'm not doing it again. I've had my last cigarette, no more. And then you've got about another 15% that will be able to give up through help. So whether it's like nicotine gum or patches. And then there's a massive proportion of the population that will need that talking therapy, for example, to stop them. To realize that, yes, there will be the withdrawal, but the more you practice being a non-smoker, the easier it's going to become until it becomes a new habit.
Yeah.
So again, you can start at any time. You can restart at any time as well. And it's what works for you. So what works for person A might not work for person B, and that's okay.
Yeah. The campaign this year by Hildar University Health Board was based around there's a lot of anecdotal evidence that people have a cigarette when they're feeling stressed or anxious, and they're like, "Oh, I'll just have a quick cigarette." And there's research being conducted which shows that it's not actually it's not helping you as much as you think it is. So if it's not helping you in that manner, then why don't you try and find an alternative that will actually be beneficial and not just convince you otherwise. So if you need resources or you want more information, we shared their press release yesterday. So that's on our social media. It's also at purewestradio.com on the latest news. So if you are someone who's looking to quit smoking, then there is resources available out there. Tammy's just gone through. You might be one of the lucky ones that just decides, oh, actually, I'm done now. But if you're not, there are other services available, and you can go through them. And if it's something that is linked to your values, going back to what Hayley said earlier, then it is something that, even if you fall off the bandwagon and you think, oh no, I've just caved, I've just fallen for my cravings, I've just had one, it doesn't matter, because you can just stop again. And that's what's really key. I am aware that we are running a little bit out of time, so let's look forward to next month. Because with a new month comes a new awareness day or something else to be aware of. And I think, Tammy, this is how we first got introduced.
Yes, it was Stress Awareness Month. All those years ago.
All those years ago, we ran a series of talks over once a week in the month of April. Hayley, I'll bring you in first. Stress. And we just talked about smoking anxiety, and people get stressed and they light up. What is stress, and what are we going to be diving headfirst into next month?
Well, do you know, I did a short introduction to stress years and years and years ago, and I was really stressed at the time. I think I was probably battling depression around about that time, at the early stages of my depression. And this nurse stood up and she had this presentation, and she brought this picture of a heart on there, clogged up, with the arteries were all clogged up. And she said, your arteries will clog up exactly the same as if you were eating a fatty diet if you are stressed constantly. And I knew at that point in time I was stressed, and I had quite the fright because I'd been stressed for some time. So it has a massive impact. You know, there's good stress and there's bad stress. The good stress will support us to do what we need to do. It will motivate us. It will push us and cheer us on. Whereas bad stress, long-term stress, related to jobs or life in general, can have a real detrimental effect physically, mentally, emotionally, and it's worth getting support for that.
Yeah. Was that the was it a 6-week stress awareness course? Was that the one that you went to? Because I've heard that education around what stress is often enough for people to recognize it and be like, oh, actually, I need, as you've just said there, I need to do something about it. And you mentioned there the physical impact that we just don't consider when looking at stress, and it is a scary prospect, isn't it?
It really is, because I don't think you realize, like, your body's releasing all these chemicals constantly, and yet, you know, in the caveman days, we would run, we would do something to get rid of these chemicals. We're not doing it. We're living quite a sedentary life, so we may be stressed for a week, a fortnight, a month, but we're not doing anything with our bodies to release those hormones, and yet we're absorbing them. So it really is a good way to think about stress, in terms of, okay, I am stressed. What can I do for myself to I suppose, unburden myself of the stress?
Yeah. So next month, that will be Thursday, the 13th of April, if my memory serves me correctly. One of the topics that we'll be talking about, we'll be looking at stress awareness, stress management, things to look out for. And one thing that Tammy, you've also mentioned, it can be a byproduct, a symptom of stress, but it's also its own thing. If I'm reading my notes correctly, but looking at IBS.
So it's also, April's quite a lucky month as well, because you've got stress awareness and we've got IBS awareness month as well, so irritable bowel syndrome. And we know that IBS, I apologise if anyone's eating or doing anything at the moment, this late of an evening, but IBS itself is either going to be biological or functional. So biological means that there's a diagnosis, a medical diagnosis for it. Functional IBS is unfortunately stress related, a majority of the time.
Right.
So it's good to be mindful. And again, what Hayley said, stress comes down to that cellular level. So whether it does come out in IBS or whether it comes out in eczema, those other skin conditions, it's about listening to our bodies and recognizing that something's not right.
Yeah. Fantastic. Like, thank you. And so that we're already in for an interesting show next month. If you've got something that you want us to consider, you can email us at studio@purewestradio.com. Just put in the subject line "Healthy Minds," and we'll be able to tailor the show to your needs. And if you liked the guided imagery that Tammy did earlier on, and you want to have something similar, or you want something condensed towards the end of the show, then let us know. We'd love to get your feedback on Healthy Minds, Better Lives. That email address again is studio@purewestradio.com. I think all that's left to say is thank you to Tammy, to Hayley, and to Tai Chi Frank, who joined us earlier on. And Tammy, what's your takeaway from this month's show?
There's a lot. I'm still kind of really enjoying Tai Chi Frank's tube station analogy, and when everything gets congested, our bodies don't work or perform in the way that we want to. So it's all about listening to our bodies and making time to relax.
Making time to relax. And Hayley, the final word with you. What's your takeaway from this month's Healthy Minds, Better Lives?
I think well-being doesn't have to be hours and hours of practice. If you're doing it on a daily basis and you've got the right practice, you can do it for 5 minutes and it'll have quite an impact on your life.
There you go. So it seems to be the takeaway most months, actually, is that it's not anything necessarily groundbreaking. It's just finding that time and setting those boundaries. We have come to the end. We're playing a bit of Justin Bieber now to play us out of this Healthy Minds, Better Lives. Tammy, thank you so much for this evening. Hayley, thank you so much for this evening. And I'm already excited for what we're going to learn and uncover about ourselves next month. That's on Thursday, the 13th of April. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
I want you to know